Hello friends, welcome to my channel. This is our today's question on Leetcode, and this question is basically daily challenge on 19th July. And the question is nothing but non-overlapping intervals. So we will read the question first, and we will try to figure out how we can solve this question. So basically, given an array of intervals where intervals of I is nothing but start I comma end I, and what we have to do, we have to return the minimum number of intervals you need to remove to make the rest of intervals non-overlapping. So basically we are given with these intervals and we have to remove some intervals or minimum number of intervals such that the rest of the intervals are non-overlapping. So let us have a closer view for this question. So you can see that this is our interval and these are our intervals, and corresponding to them we are start I and end I with us. So for the first interval, the start is nothing but at 1 and it ends at 2. Second interval starts at 2 and ends at 3. Third interval starts at 3 and ends at 4. And the fourth one starts at 1 and ends at 3. So let us draw this interval on this scale. So when we for first interval, you can see that it is from 1 to 2. So we can draw first interval like this. For second interval, it is from 2 to 3. So we can draw it from 2 to 3. And the third interval, again it is from 3 to 4. So yeah, we can draw it from 3 to 4. And for the last interval, you can see that it is 1 to 3. So let us draw it here, 1 to 3. So you can see that this fourth interval is overlapping with first interval and second interval. So we will remove this interval in order to get non-overlapping intervals. So what we can do, we can just remove the interval 4, or we can remove interval 1 and interval 2. So if we remove interval 4, what we will see, if we remove interval 4, you can see that interval 1, interval 2 and interval 3, all these intervals are non-overlapping. Okay, but what when we remove interval 1 and interval 2? So if we remove interval 1 and interval 2, we will have interval 4 with us and interval 3 with us. So they are also non-overlapping, but we have to remove two intervals in the second case, and for the first case we have to remove only one interval. So basically what we have to do, we have to return minimum number of intervals which has to be removed. So for this case we will remove only one interval, that is interval 4. So after removing this interval 4, we will get our other intervals as non-overlapping. So this was basically, you can see that for the first input there will be our answer 1. So yeah, you can see that the answer is nothing but 1. So let us see how we can solve this question. What we will do, we will just sort this intervals according to end time, okay, or end. So I will write here, we will sort the interval according to or in ascending order of end. Okay, so we will sort this interval according to this thing. Okay, so after sorting what our interval will be, so this will be our new interval. Basically it is not new interval, it is just a sorted interval. Okay, so what we will do in this sorted interval, we will check whether we will have two pointers with us. One will be current pointer and the other one will be our previous pointer. So what we will do, we will have two pointers with us. So I will draw here. So yeah, here we have two pointers with us. One is previous and other one is let's say current. Okay, so other one is nothing but current pointer. Okay, so initially our previous pointer is somewhere here. Okay, so our initially previous pointer is somewhere here, and our current pointer is basically at 0th interval. Okay, so what we will do, we will just take 0th. What we will do, they have asked us to remove minimum number of intervals such that we get non-overlapping intervals. So what we can do, we can find out maximum number of intervals which we can keep it in our list, and we will if we get a maximum number of intervals, we need in our intervals. So basically removing those maximum number of intervals from our total number of intervals, we will get our minimum number of interval that we need to remove. So I will write here okay uh, in order to find out minimum number of intervals to be removed, we will find maximum number of intervals uh, which we will not remove and subtract them from total number of intervals. Okay, so what we will do, we will find out maximum number of intervals which we will not remove, and after that what we will do, we will subtract it from total number of intervals. So you can see that for this case we can keep three intervals with us, that is interval 1, interval 2 and interval 3, and we will not keep interval 4 with us. So we have find out the maximum number of interval which we will not remove, and we will, what we have done, we have subtracted that number from the total number of intervals. So total number of interval was 4, and the maximum number of interval which we will not remove is nothing but 3. So 4 minus 3 is nothing but 1. So in this way we will find out our minimum number of intervals which we will remove. So for this, what we will do, we will have previous pointer with us and current pointer with us, and what we will do, if for current pointer, our start I is greater than or equal to end of our previous pointer. So basically what did I mean, if start of current interval is equal to or greater than end of previous interval, then previous interval and current interval are not overlapping. So basically this is the case. This is the main logic for this question, that if our previous interval, so basically this pointer means these are intervals. So previous means previous interval and current means current interval. So for the current interval, if the start time, or if the current interval starts at let's say here in this case 1, and if it is greater than or equal to the end time of the previous interval, then we can say that the intervals are non overlapping. So as we have done here, you can see that the end time of interval 1 was 2 and start time of interval 2 was again 2. So you can see that it was not overlapping. So that's why I have written here, if our current interval is equal to or greater than the end of previous interval, then previous interval and current interval are not overlapping. So for this case, we will definitely add this first interval. Okay, and what we will do, we will start from the second interval. Okay, so we will start from the second interval. Okay, and our previous will be nothing but our first interval. Okay, so what we will do, if our current interval, okay, if start of current interval is greater than or equal to end of previous interval, what we will do, we will just take that interval. Okay, we will just take that interval, otherwise we will not take that interval because it will be overlapping. So you can see that for this situation, the second interval and first interval, you can see that, okay, basically this is our sorted interval which is according to end time. Okay, so we have sorted it first, and what we will see, we will see for this current interval whether the start of this current interval is greater than or equal to previous interval or not. So you can see that it is not following this condition, it is violating this condition. The current is 1 and the end of previous is 2, so it is not equal to or greater than the end of previous interval. So for this case we will not take our we will not take this interval. Okay, so for this case we will not take this interval, so we will cut it from this part, so we will not take it. Okay, so what we will do, we will just go to the next interval. So we are on the third interval, and again we will check for the previous one, that if we add this interval with the previous one or not. So you can see that the end time of the previous is 2 and start time of current is nothing but again 2. Both are equal, which means they are not overlapping. So what we can do, we can keep this interval in our final interval or list, and we will just move in for the next interval. So what we can do, we can keep this interval with us. So okay, this interval will be in our part. Again, this was also in our consideration. Okay, so if we found if we are not removing this interval, what we will do, we will just update the value of previous to this interval. Okay, so this interval will be our new previous interval, and what we will do, we will just move to the next index or next interval. Again, for this interval you can see that start time of this current interval is equal to end time of previous interval. So what does it mean? We can take this interval, so we can also take this interval. So in this way you can see that we can take 3 intervals, and we will not take this interval with us. So these are the maximum number of intervals which we can take. So I will write here uh, okay, max intervals we can take is 2 or 3. So we need to remove at least 4 minus 3. Okay, 4 minus 3 intervals, that is we need to remove one interval such that other intervals are non-overlapping. So what was the overall summary? We will first sort this interval according to this condition. Okay, and after this what we will do, we will just create 2 pointers with us, that is previous and current, and basically we will definitely add the first interval. Okay, we will just add the first interval, and we will check from the second interval to the last interval, and we will check whether the start time of current interval is greater than or equal to previous end time of previous interval or not. So if this condition is true, then what we will do, we will just update the previous to the current one, and we will take that interval for our counting of maximum number of intervals which we can take, and we will just move to the next interval. So we will first find out the maximum number of interval that we can take, and we will subtract that number from the total number of intervals, and we will get a minimum number of intervals which we will not take. So let us try to code this question. So what we have to do, first we have to create a what we have to do, we have to sort these intervals according to the ascending order of end time. So for this I will have a comparator function here. So static bool compare, so it will be like this. Okay, so what we will do, we will just return a of 1, which means the end time greater than b of 1. So basically this will this comparator function will sort the intervals according to the end time of our given intervals. Okay, so we will have some variable with us, int n, which is nothing but intervals dot size, and what we will do, we will sort the vector. So sort intervals dot begin comma intervals dot end, and what we will do, we will use this compare function here. So compare. Okay, so what it will do, it will sort intervals according to uh, ascending order of n time. Okay, so this will sort the intervals in ascending order of n time. And after that, what we will do, we will have two pointers with us, int previous, which is nothing but 0, and we will again have a variable with us, int count. So it will be it will be 0 initially. So what does it mean? It will count maximum number of intervals which we can take in consideration. Okay, so as I have said earlier, we will just take the first interval and we will iterate from the second interval to the last interval. So if we take the first interval, we will have a count as 1, so we will increase the value of count by 1. So this is because we are taking the uh, 0th interval. So basically we are on 0 based indexing, so I will write here 0th interval. So that's why our previous is nothing but 0. So our 0th interval will be our previous, and what we will do, we will iterate from the first interval to the last interval. So for int I is equal to 0 comma I less than n I plus plus. So what we will do, if for this current interval, if the start time is greater than or equal to end time, so I will write here, if intervals of I comma 0 is greater than or equal to intervals of prev of 1. So what does it mean? It means that if start time of our current interval is greater than or equal to end time of previous interval. So if this is the case, what we can do, we can take this interval in our consideration. So what does it mean? We will take this interval for consideration. Okay, so what we will do, we will just increase the value of count. So as I said here, we will take this interval, and what we will do, we will just update the value of previous to this current interval. So the value of previous will be nothing but it is I. Okay, and if it is not the case, we will not do anything. And after that, what we will do, we will find out the minimum number of intervals. So for this we will have int mini, and it is nothing but total minus maxi. So total minus count, so n minus count. So what we will do, we will just return mini. So let us see whether the code works or not. So you can see that all the cases are passing. So let us see for the main cases. Yeah, all cases are passing. So let us recall what we have done in this question. So basically, initially we have some interval with us. So you can see that this was the interval, and we are having start time and end time of those intervals, and we have plotted this interval on this scale, and we saw that the interval 4 is overlapping. So what we can do, we can remove interval 1 or interval 2 also, interval 1 and interval 2, or we can remove interval 4. So in order to get a minimum number of intervals which we have to remove, we will just remove interval 4. So our answer for this case will be 1. So what we have done to solve this question, we have just sorted this interval according to the end time. So you can see that this we have sorted according to the end time. And what we have done, what was the logic behind solving, we will just check if we will have two pointers with us, that is previous and current, and we will check whether for the current interval the start time is greater than or equal to end time of previous interval or not. So I have written here, if start time of current interval is equal to or greater than end of previous interval, then previous interval and current interval are not overlapping. So this was the main logic for this question. And if this condition is valid, what we can do, we can store the current interval for our consideration. So for those cases, we will count the current interval, and by doing and we will iterate for over all the intervals. So by doing this we will get maximum number of intervals which we will not remove. So I have written here, we will find maximum number of intervals which we will not remove, and after that what we will do, we will subtract those intervals from total number of intervals. So that's what we have done here. We have used this comparator function to sort the intervals according to the end time of the intervals. Okay, and what we have done, we have taken we have taken pointers with us, that is previous, and I is nothing but current here. So initially previous is 0, and as I said here that we will just take the first interval, so that's why the previous will be nothing but 0. And if we are taking the first interval or 0th interval, we will just increase the value of count, and what we'll do, uh, basically it is 1. Okay, so basically we were iterating from the second interval, no? Okay, so it will be 1. So let us see again whether this works or not. So basically it was 1. Okay, it was not 0. Yeah, it is working. So yeah, you can see that we will iterate from 1 to n, and we will see whether for the current interval where our start time is greater than end time of previous interval or not. So if it is validating, what we will do, we will just increase the value of count, and we will update the value of previous. So by doing this we will find out uh, maximum number of intervals which we will not remove, and we will subtract that number from total number of intervals, and we will get our minimum number of intervals which we will remove in order to get non-overlapping intervals. So I hope you understood my solution, and if you like my solution, you can like my video also. And if you have any kind of doubt regarding this question, or if you have any kind of idea, if you want to share any other ideas regarding this question, you can share it in comment section also. And the solution for this code or question will be available in description. You can see that from here also. And if you like my video, if you like my solution, you can like my video also. And if you want to see some more videos like this, you can subscribe my channel. Thank you.